Welcome to Unboxing Entrepreneurship. Now, we normally talk about the tactical things about running a business, like the business model, the finances, how to hire, what are the difficulties that you face when you're running a business. But today, we actually talk a little bit about the mindset of an entrepreneur, what is required, and what are the different mental phases that you go through. So, I've got Roopal. She's the founder of Cornucopia Pictures. Very different industry to my previous guest. So I look forward to this conversation. Let's get right into it. Hi, Roopal. Welcome to Unboxing Entrepreneurship.
Thank you so much, Pallavi. So happy to be here.
Great. So, when I wanted to talk to you because even though you come from a very different industry than all my other guests, what I found most interesting was that your challenges were the same, so you had the same kind of difficulties launching your own venture. So let's talk a little bit about that. But before we get into it, perhaps you can tell our viewers what Cornucopia Pictures is and, what is it that you do?
Right. So Cornucopia Pictures is a production house that creates children's content. By content, I do not like to use the word content, but these days that's the in thing. But by content, I mean cinema, short films, feature films, documentaries, nonfiction, everything to do with, especially catering to the age group of 7 to 14 years of age. And we've started a YouTube channel primarily, which is called Cornucopia Pictures, where we have curated short films, international films from all over the world. That has been our first step.
I see. And how long have you been doing this?
We launched the channel in July 2022. Yeah. So not too long. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, when we spoke about it, you said that it was quite difficult to launch your own production house. And maybe for our viewers, perhaps you can tell us a little bit about the industry and why that was a challenge.
I think primarily, one, if you look around, there's hardly any children's content. And when I say that, people say, no, there's a lot of content. And then you realize all the content is under 7 years and over 15 years. So there's young adult content, and we have a very strong market, like lot of content for toddlers and slightly upwards of, like I said, 6 and 7. And suddenly after 7 years, there's nothing. And I am seeing this internationally. I'm not saying it's only in India, but if you go to Netflix, you go to all the OTT platforms, Hotstar, nobody is catering this age group. Barring one or two action shows, there is actually nothing. One odd web series like The Investigators, which is one of my favorites. There's nothing. That also comes from Australia. Right. So for me, that was like a huge gap, which I thought, because it's such an influential age, and I suddenly felt that there were no stories for children where they see themselves on screen. There's a lot of animation content which gets passed off as children's content. But if you notice, none of these animation films have children as protagonists or children driving the narratives of the story forward. And people ask, why is that important? Films are just entertainment and fun. As long as children can sit through a film and enjoy with popcorn, it's all hunky-dory and it's all great. And yes, it is great. Stories are meant to entertain, and that's exactly how it should be. But there is no reflection. Like, what do you feel? Which are if I ask you the films that you have liked, since childhood to now, the ones you will point out are the ones that you relate to the most, where the protagonist story affected you, where what is happening in the film is relatable to you, it affects you. You are able to, in fact, see yourself, a reflection of your life or your, yourself in that protagonist. And if that's absent for children, I find that a great sort of disadvantage for the children growing up in 7 to 14 years, because there's nothing that reflects their lives on screen. Stories, help us make us feel less alone. And if you see that on screen, if you see characters taking on challenges that you are facing in your life, it gives you an impetus to sort of move forward with that. Stories are inspiring, like nature stories. That is why storytelling exists. Otherwise, it wouldn't exist at all, right? And films, I feel, are the way that, that can reach the masses. You don't need to be literate watch a film. You don't even need a language barrier to watch a film, and I'm not even talking about subtitles. The visual language of the film itself is so strong that it cuts across language barriers as well. So they really medium, it really does cut across all kinds of nationalities, races, gender, all biases that we have created around us. So yeah, I feel that there's a huge gap for cinema for 14 years, and rightly so, because that market is very tricky. It's not like no one thought of it, but it is a very challenging market because it's very difficult to sort of scale up in that, which we can talk about as we go further. But yeah, that is the gap I feel is very, very apparent, and I wanted to do something about it.
Got it. All right. So, you have been in this industry for a long time, and so obviously you knew, like you were able to identify the gap, and you were able to identify the solution that would potentially work. But was there something that you discovered about yourself in the last 1 year of, running a production house, or before you were
Oh my
starting to
God,
create it?
everything, everything. I'm surprised I didn't know so much about myself, because I always consider myself extremely self-aware, and because I am that sort of a person, who will even sort of break down, analyze every little thing about, okay, why am I triggered by this, or why do I feel what I feel? And yet this journey has been the most challenging, just in a very short span of 6 to 8 months. When I started this, I promised myself that I will do it as long as it's fun, and it has to be fun. And by fun, I don't mean it has to be all hunky-dory and it's all great and you're just, in fact, it's, as you obviously know, that it's exactly the opposite of that.
Yes.
But the most wonderful thing about it is that it has helped me discover so many new talents of mine, and has shown me what are my genuine spaces that I need to work on. What are the spaces that I push myself in? Because this is way out of my comfort zone. I have never been out of my comfort zone, except as a parent, of course. I think that trumps everything else. But yeah, parenting, this is somewhere where I feel completely out of my comfort zone. Yeah.
Right. So you come from a background of telling stories, right? I mean, you're an author, and that's where your strength lies. And now you're running a production house, which I'm assuming involves a lot more responsibilities than what you're used to.
It does. And just the very fact of that thought coming in and saying, I will start a business, Pallavi, I think most people do not understand. If you come from a very regular middle class family and growing up in the 80s, 90s, where business was, families were very clearly demarcated as, my father is in service, my father does business, mothers were, in general homemakers. Very few mothers at that time were actually working. So I'm saying your relationship with wealth, your relationship with money in your most formative years defines so much about you as you grow. So growing up in very regular middle class family I never thought I would ever say I'm an entrepreneur. And I still don't. I have to be very honest, I don't. I feel like an imposter. Remember when you reached out to me and I was like, sure, if I want to do this interview right now. Because I don't know what if, all these imposter things come in. What if nothing works out? What if, I give this interview and then it suddenly, everything crashes? Think of the most weirdest of things. And just to arrive at the idea that I will start my own business, you won't believe my biggest fear. I didn't even register my company out of fear. Oh my God, something legal is happening. Like for the longest time, I didn't do it until one of my angel investors, Mr. Roopal, who came into the picture. And then I was forced to then actually make things official. Up until that point, I wasn't really, I was scared to even just register a company name. And it's so weird, that fear. Where does that come from? You don't even know. And you realize it's just the whole idea that you build around business. In 80s and 90s, doing a business was a risky thing. You did not that kind of risk in a middle class family with your wealth. You just saved, you studied, you got an education, and you went in for a job. So obviously, just the biggest mental hurdle has been simply crossing that line and saying, no, it's not this. The environment is different now. I am a different person. And just to start that itself, going over that fear and realizing that, yes, I am putting my own money behind the idea that I believe in. Because that's where I started when I made the short film called The Flyman, which I produced with my own money. And at that time, my parents were really looking at me like, have you gone crazy? Because the pandemic had just sort of ended, and there was no source of income for me. There's no immediate clear source of income for me after that. And my youth policy was expiring, that year, which I was investing randomly in. I hadn't even thought about it. 7, 8 years I was in it, and suddenly it was expiring. I said, okay, this is the budget for my short film. I really want to make it, and let's just do it. And now I think of it, I'm scared. So the good thing about me is I'm never scared when I'm doing it. It's only hindsight here comes to me like, oh my God, how did I do it? Because that was a big risk to take for someone who thinks buying everything with a plan in head. You know, I don't even buy impulsively. If I have to buy for clothes, I let me see if I need it. And here I was a decent amount of, I spent almost like 9 to 10 lakhs on that film. And that was a huge, that is the biggest investment I have made, to be very honest. One chunk, that is the biggest investment I've made. And I don't think I've been happier with any other investment in my life. So yeah, I think the wealth part of it, the money part of it, it still worries me, to be honest. But taking those small steps has sort of brought me to a point ki, acha, theek hai, we'll be able to navigate this. And if we don't, we just step back, we pause, we regroup with ourselves, see what can be done in the moment. I think that is my big learning from this journey. What can I do now? If nothing else is working, if everything is failing, whatever attempts I've made, what can I do? What is the smallest thing I can do right now? And I think that has also informed my learning in life in general. Whether I'm parenting, whether I am, it's my own writing, whether it's my own personal career as a writer, director, everything comes down to that single moment. Abhi aap kya kar sakte? So yeah, I think has been the biggest learning.
Awesome. So, you've talked, whatever I've heard in the last 10 minutes or so, you mentioned earlier that, you were a very self-aware person. You were thinking a lot about, you thought you knew yourself. And I'm getting the sense when I'm talking to you, even now, I think you are analyzing a lot of the things that are happening in your entrepreneurial journey. And, you're almost looking at it from an outside perspective and say, oh, okay, this is what is happening. This is what I need to do, or, take control of it. So I think that's pretty great. You're not getting bogged down by the details of every little day-to-day activity that you're doing. And I think that's very important for an entrepreneur because, when you're working, you can get involved in the day-to-day details. In fact, that is what your work is, because you don't have to think about the business from a very outside perspective. But when you're an entrepreneur, you have to find the balance that you have to keep things moving, but you also have to zoom out and think, okay, where is this going in the long term? Are we doing the right things? Or do we need to change and do something different? And I think you have the mindset for it, like whatever I've seen in the last 10, 15 minutes.
Thanks for saying that. Maybe I need to hear this because I think I would be lying if I say that I don't get bogged down by the everydayness of it, because the everydayness does, the details sort of pull you down and you suddenly reach a point where you are very, very scared. And I think I've not been so afraid in my life as I have been in the last few months. And I want to say that out openly because I don't feel shame around that fear, because I know that it's something, like I said, so out of my comfort zone. I've never done this. So if I'm feeling like an imposter being here, I think that's a very normal reaction to have. I have had anxiety. I have anxiety attacks. I've had panic attacks with some certain things, worrying about finance, worrying about failure mostly. What if it fails? And I'm like, so what? And then that is the time you need to zoom out. And I think it has happened after you've gone through that whole circle of anxiety, fear, all of it, the darkness, you face darkest demons, and then suddenly, then there's no other choice left but to zoom out and say, it's okay. Tomorrow's another day. Let's start again and let's see where it goes. Like I said, that's the fun of it also. That's also something to enjoy, the ups and downs of it. If it's just going up, I don't think you learn any, like you do. I'm not saying it has to be done to learn, but learn faster. You learn a lot when you are failing than when you're succeeding.
Yeah. And that's the reason why a lot of us start what we do, because of course we are married to the idea, we want to make a difference, but we do know that it is a challenging journey. And somewhere at the back of our mind, we are kind of prepared to go through the challenges, because we know that eventually everything that you fail at or every challenge that you come across adds to your personality. And you're looking forward to being that kind of a person. Growing and learning every day kind of a person.
Absolutely, yeah. What else are we here to do in this life? I truly feel, Pallavi, and maybe it sounds like a very Zen thing to do, but I think I've come to the conclusion that everything that I do, whether I'm a parent, whether I'm a writer, whether I'm a filmmaker, whether I'm an entrepreneur. All of these are just channels of expression. But the real me is me. You know, I'm growing through these things. These things are informing me just as I'm informing them. And you know, I always then come back to that bit of it, that this is just a way of expression. If this does not work, I'll find another way to express myself, you know, because that is what we are here. We are here to figure out, I think, who we are and how to relate to this. So yeah, it's just one more thing on the journey.
Right. All right. All right. Let's put your business hat back on. We talked a little bit about the business model, and you said that you did struggle with a few options and you finally settled on one. Would you like to walk us through your journey in that?
Sure. So when we started, when I thought of Cornucopia, I always thought we'll go with a content-led approach, because I am I am a writer and filmmaker. So for me, that is something I know, and I wanted to move ahead with my strengths rather than anything else. That was my understanding of it. But I quickly realized that just getting funding for something like that, and content is a very capital intensive business. And right now, you see the industry, even with adult content, is struggling a lot with OTT, theaters, all of those debates are happening. And, you know, it is in a flux at this point. So, but nobody's thinking of children's content. So that's like a second market for everyone. Yeah.
Yes.
Which is okay for me. I think I'm very happy that no one else is thinking of this. I don't mind being the first person thinking of this. But yeah, it's very challenging to get funding for content. So I struggled with that initially, and I wasn't sure how to go about it, because I was trying and I didn't understand, you know, where to reach out for this. And then I reached a sort of, you know, you reach a wall and you're like, okay, now what? What do I do now? And that the whole thing came again. Okay, let me start with what I can right now. And I had one film that I had produced and I had nowhere to put it, because there was a platform that were offering me half of what I had spent on the film. And they also wanted the idea of the film, which I was not okay with. I said, I can't even make another film for money that they give me. So what's the point? So I said, I don't want that. And I said, let me start. And there must be other films like mine who do not have a platform, you know, in children's short films, do not have a platform, because feature films on children get sold. They get sold, they get theatrical releases, but short films for children do not have a platform as such, you know, definitely not in India. But when I started looking in India, nobody's making short films for children. Again, because of the market, that's how the markets are working. So then I realized, I went to all the film festivals that I had applied to with my film, The Flyman. And I went and saw the list of winners of all the past, say, 2-3 years. So we started with one intern. So it was this intern and me, both of us sort of, you know, curated this list of films. We reached out to so many, I think over more than 100 filmmakers across the world, and reached out to them. So many of them didn't even get the emails, didn't respond because the email IDs were old. You know, all of that happened. It took us 3 months to curate a list of 14 films, award-winning international short films that we could bring out on the channel. And all these filmmakers, I literally just wrote them a very long email with my intention that this is what I'm trying to bring in India. There's nothing like that in India at all, but I don't want to do this for free. As a filmmaker, if someone comes to me asking for my film, you know, and most film festivals even just write, they said, we want your film for a catalog, but they're not even paying any sort of screening fees, which is very unfair, because if most short films are self-funded, you know, most short films are made by filmmakers by their own money. So what I did was, I paid each filmmaker a nominal screening fees, which is not much, but it's just a token of, you know, respect. It is saying that, you know, this, we see you and we want your film to be a part, but we don't want to, it's a token of exchange. It's like an energy exchange, what people call these days, right? And I didn't want to do anything for free. So I started there, and nobody on YouTube does that. That was the difference that we did. On YouTube, people just say, you give your content, if there are views and if we can monetize on those views, then we'll share. Next step, that the moment we start monetizing through our YouTube channel, we will share that revenue with our filmmakers. But at this point, we've already offered them a screening fees and, you know, got the rights to screen it on our YouTube channel. And luckily, so many filmmakers responded very positively to that. And we had chats with them just to see, you know, they wanted to see who was behind this. And we had video conversations, so many of it. And finally, we were able to curate a list of 14 films, which meant watching a lot of films, even rejecting some because we felt this was not what we wanted our channel to be, very specifically. And we had these films and brought it out on
Mm.
YouTube. Yeah, so that was how our first step started. And this is just a
Yeah.
curation model for us. We have not even
Right.
gotten into content creation, because I'll be honest, that is somewhere again where I want to do things differently.
Yeah.
I want to respect and honor the writers in the industry, because I've been in that place, and our industry still does not respect writers enough. And I want to be able to share IP with writers whenever we producers. Especially writers are coming with their ideas. They're coming with complete scripts, ready content for us. We want to share the IP with them as producers. We do not want to say that we are the only ones taking ownership of the product that you've created, because I genuinely feel money is not the thing that drives. You have the money and you don't have an idea. What do? It has to be a partnership, right? I'm not saying it has to be 50 partnership, but it has to be some part of the IP ownership should also belong to the creators, the creative people who are behind what we're making. So yeah, I hope we can sort of materialize it soon as we go forward.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. I mean, I've known many authors who unfortunately do not get compensated enough for, all of the effort and all of the ideas and the writing that they get, and, all of the money goes to the publisher. And in fact, I remember that my previous startup, we were running a magazine for children, and we shared the copyright of our stories with our writers. And I mean, we had a very clear agreement that you can go away and publish it wherever you want, as long as you give us a mention. Because of course, it's publicity for me as well, right?
Absolutely.
So, and it's such a very small thing, but I feel that creativity. If I have the money, I cannot create a story if I'm not creative enough. And there's a lot that goes into creativity, and I think it's underrated.
Absolutely. And how do people not understand it? It's something so basic, right? It's something so basic. And I don't know why we have not arrived at that those laws yet, because it really needs to be a part of the regulation. It cannot just be in word, okay, one good person is doing some good deed. It can't be that. It has to be legal. That's how things should be.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So what are you looking forward to in the coming year?
So this year we are very excited. Things are still under planning, but we are planning to do an on-ground film festival for children. Hopefully, we'll be able to do in multiple cities. I'm not committing to that yet, but definitely in Mumbai, where we are based, we are planning to do an on-ground film festival, international film festival for children, one of its kind, which will have engagement sessions. Because I think my primary purpose with Cornucopia is also that cinema can't just be for passive consumption. I want children to engage with it. Because we keep talking about screen time in such a negative way. That's only because we understand screen time like that. Because we ourselves as adults are watching screen very mindlessly. And I want it to be a very mindful activity for children. Whatever you're watching, you need to discuss. What did you just watch? Just pause before you move on to the next content or next piece of cinema or film or web series. Just sit down and see what you just did, reflect upon it. And we are sort of planning this film festival around that. And hopefully we'll be able to make some announcements soon. Let's see. Yeah, that's something I'm very, very excited about this year.
Good. Sounds like a lot of work. I wish you all the best for it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Thank you so much for coming on Unboxing Entrepreneurship and sharing your journey with us. I think the subject itself will be very exciting for the viewers because film and all is very, very glamorous. But I'm glad that we were able to have a very mindful look at it, actually, from a very, very different perspective. And I think that's what the viewers will take away.
I hope so. Thank you so much. I had a good chat too. It's a great, I think any conversation like this is also a great point of insight into how you're thinking. Suddenly you're out of your and then reflecting upon what you've just done. So it's always welcome. Thank you so much for making me do this. Not making me like an imposter.
Don't worry, everyone goes through that.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much and have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.